right, so tell me a little bit about yourself and why you decided to get involved in Streetsboro Junior Baseball and
Yeah.
Softball.
So I've been a resident of Streetsboro since September 2015.
Okay.
And I was laughing about it with my wife the other day. I go, we've been here for a while.
Yeah. 10 years now.
My youngest just started cross country. So like every season he's changing over into something new. So we're transitioning from baseball into cross country now. And we laughed about it because we were like, it's the same kind of group of kids that he's kind of grown up along with. And it was like, I was sitting back and laughing about it because it was like, it's reminiscent of how I grew up.
Yeah, same.
You had the same group of friends and you jumped together from sport to sport to sport and you went, along that way. So we've now been in the community, 10 years and just now it's kind of like, wasn't even a kind of like a conscious effort. It was just something that just naturally occurred.
Yeah.
We got involved in different things. And this year is, counting it, it's my 33rd year of like volunteering.
Okay. Wow.
So I started as a freshman in high school where I grew up in Parma.
Okay.
And my parents were like, I was of the generation of you don't come into the house until the street lights are on. Yep. And if you need a drink of water, there's a hose in the backyard.
Absolutely. Yep.
And they always wanted me to have something to do during the summer.
Okay.
So I started volunteering for like my younger brother's teams.
Okay.
So I was like coaching T-ball teams and stuff like that. And then, as he got older and other things, he wasn't as interested in sports. I still stuck around, tried to volunteer for different things. So I volunteered for Habitat for Humanity for a number of summers. Any kind of recreational sports kind of stuff I had always participated in, volunteered for. So like me working with Streetsboro Junior Baseball and Softball was just kind of natural.
Yeah.
My son needed, was just getting involved in sports and, being at home, working with dad all the time kind of thing. It was just kind of a natural, well, I'll help you, I'll coach the team kind of thing. And it was that board, it was their first season together.
Okay.
And just coached our first game. We lost 15-0 to Rootstown. And I remember just kind of like all these kids are practicing at home, all of these different things. Like there's a significant gap. And I'm like I was, you get motivated after a game like that. You're angry and you've got feelings. You got somewhere you got to put it. And it's like, well, I got to go talk to the president about this because, things aren't organized in a certain way. And we've really got to work something out to make this a better experience for the kids.
Sure.
And I showed up at the field and they're running around with like chalk and field dry and like they're on a gator driving back and forth. And I looked at them, I'm like, no, they need help.
Yeah.
They don't need, input from a parent. They just need help. They need hands. And, it was at that point where I said, okay, great. I have experience in doing this. What can I do to help?
Yeah.
And it started actually with their social media where it was like, hey, we want somebody on our Facebook page to do these things. Can you do this? Can you do that? So I would go around to different games and take videos and pictures and put them on Facebook for parents and stuff.
That's great.
I would also kind of watch the discussion boards on Facebook from time to time and throw in a couple of comments here and there to just get people to look back at what we were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. It creates engagement, right? Like that's the whole point is to get people engaged. That's why it's social media. So that's brilliant, really.
Yeah, I mean, we had like 300-400 followers at one point in time. I think we're up to like 1,100. I mean, it's awesome. Not a huge jump, but with the experience that I had in that, because I'd done that with the then Cleveland Indians.
Okay.
Worked with them. I don't know if you'd heard of Party Annapolis.
Yeah.
About 10 years.
Yep.
So that was me.
Okay. Awesome.
I was friends with their social media team.
Okay.
And we were season ticket holders and we would just go to games and just kind of interact. Like at that time, 2015, 2016, a lot of people were going to games.
Right.
And then they went on that run.
Yeah.
And we were a part of that. So, like, I had made a sign. As a matter of fact, here in Streetsboro, I went to Target, grabbed a sign, wrote Party Annapolis on the sign, took it to a game, and, we used that.
That blew up. That went, I remember that. That went wild. That was, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
that was you.
It turned into, a very similar thing where you just start very small, you put a little bit of effort in, and it grows.
Yeah.
And that was something that, like, I tried to apply to what we were doing. It was like, just throw in little bits and pieces. See if you can get attention. You can get people to want to join into things. I mean, it was exactly that example before. I went to the field. I was passion to have a comment about this game we just lost and saw people needed help.
Right.
And then it was like, all right, you know, a little bit of a fire, and how do we build from that?
Right. Absolutely. So how long have you been in the organization then?
Now, so a coach for 4 years and 3 years as a board member.
Very nice. And how long as a president?
Just this year.
Just here? Okay. Awesome. Great. What, you know, for those not familiar, I guess, with Streetsboro Junior Baseball and Softball, tell us a little bit about it. I mean, it's been around forever. It was around when I was a kid and growing up through the community.
Yeah, it's evolved a lot.
Yeah.
You know, you look at the history of it, and you know, there's a lot of people you run into, and it's like, hey, I was a part of this as a kid, and you try to trace it back to the different presidents and the different folks, and there's a lot of history to it. Like, we're even learning it as we go along. And that was one of the big things, is that we need to develop some continuity. You know, it's like every year to 2 years, it's something completely brand new, completely different set of folks, and like you're starting over every time.
Yeah.
And then you look around at the communities around us, and they're all kind of like rapidly developed in comparison.
Sure.
You know, and like, well, this is our recreation team, and you see the recreation team walk in with personalized, you know, helmets and jerseys and bags, and it's like, oh, you're a competitive team. No, they're recreational. That's what their city does for them, and they've been doing it for 50 years, 60 years, just like us. But we've had so much turnover that we just don't have momentum from year to year.
Makes sense.
So, you know, for me, that's where this first year as a president was, okay, you know, we keep getting to this point where we're doing a great job of surviving, but we got to get to a point where we're thriving.
Yeah.
You know, it's great to be able to provide something for 300 kids, you know, every year, but how do we get to 400?
Right.
How do you get to 500? How do you get to a point where people want to come to Streetsboro?
Sure.
As opposed to the other way around, where we've had a lot of kids go to other programs.
Right.
And it's like, you know, it'd be great if those kids stayed here.
Yeah.
And how do we get Streetsboro kids to play in Streetsboro?
And I think there's something to be said for, you know, kids playing with their friends and getting that experience like we had growing up. Like you played with your friends. It was something that was,
like we talked about earlier. It's the same group of friends, and you just change from sport to sport. You don't change from city to city.
Right,
you know, you
exactly.
stay together.
Yeah.
So how do we get into that scenario? In this past year, like, we introduced competitive teams, and that was part of the play, was to keep kids here.
Sure.
That was always something that drove kids away. They would get to a certain point, they wanted more, and there was nothing more to give. So they go, okay, well, we're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I was approached by a bunch of coaches last year, and we're like, okay, we know this board's going to break up again. You know, you guys are going to change all over, and we're just going to leave. And I went, hold on. Like, let's figure something out.
Sure.
You know, if you got a problem, let's roll up our sleeves and figure it out.
Sure.
And that was the play was, okay, great. You guys want to stay in Streetsboro? There's 48 kids that would have left.
Yeah.
How do we keep those 48 kids here? And how do we enable more kids to want to be a part of that? Because there's always kids that are on the fringe. Like, if they get a little bit more experience, it would be something they'd want to do.
Right.
Or if they don't get enough experience, then they'll move on to something else.
Yeah. Do you how many kids do you currently have?
317.
That's awesome. What have you seen it grow?
Yeah.
I would say probably
pretty solid.
Really solid.
I think the pandemic was pretty catastrophic to the program, like anything else.
Sure.
Where you had to be, you know, together. They were in the low 200s at the time.
Oh, wow.
And there were a lot of kids, like I mentioned, a lot of kids were leaving and going to other programs. And it was just a matter of, we were doing exactly that. We were doing enough to get through today, but we weren't doing things to set the kids up for tomorrow.
Sure.
What is going to bring them back? And like I mentioned, like some of those other communities that invest so much time, money, and effort into their programs, that like people see it and they're like, well, why wouldn't we want to go there?
Absolutely.
And how do we get to that? You know, you don't get to it overnight. So what are the steps that we could do? Because if we're not doing it today, it's just going to make tomorrow, the day after, the day after, the day after. So yeah, 317. This year, we formally added in the Champions Division, which is the disabled.
I saw that. That's awesome.
They play every Saturday, so they're going to be playing into August. And at this rate, this weather, they may be playing in October. it's a heartbreaker to call their commissioner
Sure.
Bradley every week and go, Bradley, I'm sorry, but it's not safe enough for assisted chairs and things
Sure.
like that on the field. But a great group of kids and parents and young adults that play.
Is that inside Streetsboro only? So
there's
play
other
with
communities
Okay.
that join us. So
Awesome.
there's folks from Hudson, there's folks from all sorts of places all around.
That's
And
fantastic.
they join us, and it's very similar to like what we want to do in the fall, where we take it something that we call the sandlot, where it's just like pick up baseball.
Perfect.
Just come play the game.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity for you to work on skills, maybe play with other players and see how they're doing. Like some of our teams in the fall would come and join.
Sure.
They play in the morning and they're like, okay, well, that game didn't go well. We still kind of want to get it out of our system. So let's go play some more.
Yeah.
And we would bring kids in from all around the community and say, okay, great. Here's a bucket of balls. Here's a couple of bats, helmets, gloves.
Have fun.
Go have fun.
Yeah.
I'll line the field for you. I'll turn on the concession stand. We'll open up and
Sure.
Go have fun.
That's great.
Play ball.
Do you think that has also having fall ball and the Champions League has also helped with your growth?
Yeah.
Good.
It's just getting more exposure to people. Like I said, a little bit of effort. You start growing. From
Absolutely. So that's probably part of your vision, obviously, as a president, is to continue to see it grow. What other steps do you have, in mind to help that?
So, true to form, with a whole lot of volunteer organizations, I have to say that was something very unique about Streetsboro as I was learning. Streetsboro is growing, but its infrastructure is still small town.
Sure.
And you run into conflicts in that from time to time, where you got to have some very tough business discussions with people over budgets and
Right.
how do we take that step. And you still mentally are of we're still this small community. We're growing a lot,
we've outgrown that small community. Yeah.
And like I had that conversation with a lot of folks, and I'm very keen to transparency because that helps get people to understand what we're doing.
Sure.
Again, I want people to come to the field motivated to say, hey, what about this? And say, I need help.
Right.
And being able to be transparent with them is the easiest way to get help. And, with our growth and the rising costs of everything that are out there, like, I don't think people understood how much it cost just for one child to play baseball.
Right.
They had no idea that it cost $403 per kid to play. And
I would never know that.
And that was just us sitting down and going, okay, we need to treat this like any organization. You have to treat it like a business. You need a balance sheet. You need to be able to put together a budget. I brought on our treasurer as someone that is a treasurer for several nonprofits, so plenty of experience doing
awesome.
that. So we were bringing in people specialized into what they were doing and saying, okay, great. Rather than it just being a parent raising their hand and saying, I have no idea how to be a treasurer. Sure. I have a bank account, I could do that. Or, you bring other folks in and say, hey, we need player development. I'm a mother or father, okay, I'll call some places and see if that works. And there's nothing wrong with people raising their hands to volunteer. But you get into exactly what I was talking about with continuity, where it's enough where people are just getting by to get through. And you don't have a whole level of expertise that takes it to year 2, year 3.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we've been doing a lot of that, where, we've built a balance sheet this year. We have a budget. When you talk about what's the multi-year plan, I actually have the ability to lay it out in financials to you and say, okay, this is where we need to be. These are the different areas that we have to be. This is the number of kids, the number of teams that we have to have in the program. And baseball and softball as a whole, it's actually retracting quite a bit. And you're finding, like we found out last night, another league is folding. Like, that would have been a nice league to move some of our teams to.
Sure.
Whereas there's other teams that are kind of like college football building massive super conferences.
Yeah.
And it's enough to a point where you as an individual community don't matter as much. You now become a number to them.
Gotcha.
And they're like, oh, are you going to pay your league fees? Well, yeah, what? But I need to talk to you about these umpires or this level of competition issue.
Right.
You become dehumanized in a certain way.
Yeah.
And being able to get our voices heard and our concerns out there and being able to develop becomes a challenge. So now you've got to overcome a little bit of that. How do we pay for it? And then you got to get into, are we in the right spot?
Sure.
And then how do I get 317 to come back?
Yeah.
And turn that into 400?
Absolutely.
Because, as I mentioned, with the retraction of baseball, fewer leagues, like kids are not as motivated and interested.
Right.
Baseball was a big part of me growing up.
Yeah.
Going to the stadium and bat day was like the pivotal moment in summer. And they don't have bat days anymore.
Right.
They don't have all these other things. And if you want to go to a baseball game with your dad, it's $200.
Exactly.
It's just not as feasible. And the things that they've done with just the game in general, where, the game was great. Like I mentioned, 2016, it used to be fun as a season ticket holder because you just go with friends.
Right.
And you had a guaranteed 3.5 hours, which to everybody else, 3.5 hours is a long time to watch a baseball game, but it's great when you're there with people to talk to.
Exactly.
And, there was a little bit of that went into how do we make the experience at City Park to be something very similar, where, yes, we're there for the kids, but how do we get people to come back? We made changes to the concession stand and stuff like that to be able to just kind of say, okay, there's more to do here. And the more that you're here, the more you're contributing to what we're doing. The more that, what can we do to throw the ball around after a game?
Yeah.
What are some other things that we could do to bring people in? Tournaments and things like that. When you have tournaments at City Park, they're long days, trust me, but they're worth it.
Yeah.
Because it's 14 hours of just opportunity. Sure, it's great for us concessions wise and stuff like that, but it's an opportunity to bring people into Streetsboro
and show them what
we do.
Yeah.
And get kids to say, oh, you have teams that are here.
Yeah.
This is great. Like, what other community has 9 ball fields?
Right. Yeah. It's a beautiful park.
It's fantastic. Guys at Parks and Rec, like, they're always on point right before a tournament game because the grass is just the right level. Like, every chalk line is straight. Everything else, it's like it's the perfect like advertisement for us.
Yeah, for this, and it represents the whole community. When people come in from other communities and see, oh, maybe this is somewhere we could, bring our family and join the baseball program and do things like that. That's great. So what you talked about the money that it costs, $403. How do local businesses and organizations help you guys with that?
Significant. So I'll use one of our competitive teams as an example. So everyone paid the same base amount to register, right? Whether you played recreational baseball, t-ball, these kinds of things, everyone paid a base amount.
Sure.
But if you wanted to play competitive, obviously you play in tournaments, you have an extra jersey, you have a little bit of, the things that go along with it. And a big contributor to that was sponsorships and donations from, various different companies that we hadn't really engaged with before.
Okay.
And part of that is just because we had parents that were trying to survive.
Right.
It was the thrive piece of it where taking $403 and making it 180, 150. I think this year our average registration was 160.
Okay.
So, and that was all made possible from folks like Link Exteriors and Dairy Queen, all of these other companies that we reached out to and said, hey, we'd love to play baseball. We just can't and compete against some of these other communities that are out there because they're so well funded.
Right.
It's ingrained into that, community there, whereas we're not there yet.
Yeah.
And how can we get there?
Yeah.
And sure, we were joking around a little bit that maybe our jerseys will look like NASCAR jerseys this year, and some of the backstops are now covered with, different things. And we laugh about the comparison to like Major League when they started doing advertising in the outfield. Similar to, but without them, they would not have had experiences like they had last weekend.
Right.
We had a team take on a tournament in Cedar Point.
That's great.
A year ago, that wasn't even
not even a thought. Yeah.
It's like they get there, and every one of those kids is like they're walking around and they're playing on like fresh turf fields, specialized cleats.
That's great.
The signs are up, no seeds, no spitting, no,
Right.
and it's like, wow, like this is a really big thing. And bringing in communities from Indiana and Michigan, and like they're all coming in from different states.
That's great.
And our kids, sure, that's a higher level of competition for them, and you have some tough experiences that come from it, but it's like, oh, that's what the next goal looks like.
Right. It opens their eyes and the coach's eyes and the board's eyes.
Yes,
right?
They see what that next step is.
Yeah.
And it's you get to that point of, why are we doing what we're doing?
Yeah.
What's the goal? What is the next step? And those kinds of experiences showed it. And the sponsorships and donations, I mean, those are not cheap tournaments.
Right.
They're expensive to get into. And on top of it, they charge a cover fee. Like, these are like multi-million-dollar kind of little organizations that are putting these things together. You walk in, and you're like, I just paid $20 to walk in just to watch the games.
Right.
And if it wasn't for those sponsors, they wouldn't have been able to go. Yes. And like, I drove out, and I didn't have, my oldest is, playing on a 13U team.
Okay.
And it was an 8U team that was in the tournament. So there's no personal connection to that, but I felt that we needed someone from our board to be there and go see these kids. And to them, like, it was like their name was in lights to get folks to come out to go see them, travel to places, be a part of what they're doing. And that journey is like, now it's the end of the season. They're upset that it's the end of the season. They want to keep going.
That's great.
Because of this kind of experience that they had. So yeah, it's all enabled through those sponsorships and donations.
And is that part of like one of the core memories that sticks with you? Like, just because of seeing the growth and something that wasn't able to happen last year. And
so I tell folks this all the time. There was a meme like a couple of years ago, and it was just someone doing a presentation.
Yeah.
And they had a slide up, and it was in children's handwriting, and it just said, "Be who you needed when you were younger."
Yeah.
And it was like, wow. Yeah, there were plenty of times where, like I said, you're a fringe scenario where I could do this if someone was there.
Right.
And if there isn't someone there, well, then I'm not going to do it. Mm-hmm. And being a difference maker to someone that's on that, should I do it? Should I not? It pushes them into an area of growth.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And we've had a couple of kids that were in that. Like, we laughed about it on our 13U team. There was a kid that walked up the first day. We told everyone on the team, everyone pitches.
Yeah.
And the look of fear on this kid's face, like, I'm not doing that. Like, yeah, you are. I go, why not? Well, I don't want anything to do with it. Okay. So the kids talked about it at school, and he's going around telling his teammates, hey, tell Coach Nate, I am not pitching. Not pitching at all. Our last game, he was the ace of the staff kind of thing.
Yeah.
And just nothing could shake him.
Yeah.
And he loved it. He was dialed into it. And sure, there's a little bit of learning, for both the player and the coach.
Right.
Kind of like, okay, this does not motivate him at all. So we've got to distract him from what the game is like. Maybe we got to make it a little bit easier. And, you hear stuff from the coaches that'll holler out from the dugout to him, and like, what does that have anything to do with baseball? I go, it doesn't have anything to do with baseball. It has everything to do with the player.
Absolutely.
Because then that just takes his mind out of what he's doing, and then suddenly he's able to,
start dealing.
And it was funny. It's just that we all laughed about it. We're like, remember, he was the one that said no. He told everyone in school to tell us no, right. And then here he is. We're going to throw you in. Oh yeah, great.
That's awesome.
I can't wait. So
that's a huge win for you as a coach and as the president, because you see kids just
develop into that, and they want to keep going.
Yeah.
Now it's like we ended the season. It's like, well, wait a minute. Like, put in all that work, and now like I'm ready for more. And
right.
It's like, great. Well, let's do it in the fall.
Yeah.
And we'll see you in the spring.
Good.
So
do they have? Do you get a big turnout for the fall ball?
So last year we ended up about 110.
Oh wow, that's great.
Just a little over a third of what our spring was.
That's awesome.
And that's sharing time with obviously the other sports.
Sure.
That's one of the challenges with youth sports is that it's now becoming more specialized.
Yeah.
So kids are like, you get coaches that are saying, no, nothing else. Yeah. This is what you are focused on. It's okay to say that, but like some of us who grew up were like, we played baseball, football, wrestling.
Yeah.
Like all these things were together. And so when you get specialized, it takes away from those kinds of opportunities because
Right.
you're focused on that. And that was one of the appeals to this pickup sandlot approach was when you're done with football in the morning,
Yeah.
and you've gone home to relax, you can come in.
Hey, you want to come have some fun, do
Come have some
something
fun.
with your friends? Yeah.
And you guys, if you need to, we've got lights on one of the field. Turn the lights on.
Yeah.
We'll do whatever it takes to enable you to play.
That's great.
And that's a big chunk and a big selling piece that hopefully we can get into the 150s
Yeah.
for the fall this year.
I think that giving them the opportunity just to work on their skills all year long, I think that that's a huge deal for the development of it for them as not only like baseball players but athletes as well. Just in just being kids, let them be kids. Like
Have fun.
yeah, I am a high school football coach down the road at the other school there, and I push kids to play all three sports. Man, it's have fun with your friends. That's the whole point. Even
You see us put it out on Facebook all the time. I look for videos that say, just play a sport.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be specialized. And when someone's telling you to specialize, like I even tease our kids about the amount of different equipment now that's specialized in what they do. Like, you want a sliding mitt? Well, steal a couple of bases,
right.
then you could wear the sliding mitt.
Yeah.
It's just kind of poking at the specialized nature of everything.
Sure.
It's like, wasn't that way, when we were younger, and I hate to be kind of like, whoa, I walked uphill both ways.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But at the same time, I remember a lot of the fun that I had
Absolutely
doing different things.
Right.
And then seeing how I could use that, using cardio from this to move into this,
Sure.
to do this. The amount of, I remember trying to put on weight for wrestling, and I was, doing the whole protein powders, everything else. I was not putting on weight. I was just getting taller.
Okay.
So suddenly I went from, wrestling at 5'8" and 110 pounds to the next year I was 6'2" and 140. I didn't really put on a whole lot of weight.
Sure.
And it's like, well, basketball sounds like what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah.
But had I not had those experiences in wrestling, I wouldn't have been able to use that for basketball. Exactly. And seeing how kids can do that, like starting up cross country now.
Yeah.
It's like, you really shouldn't have complained about the amount of times we had you running the base paths.
Right. Yeah. This is nothing compared to that.
Nothing compared to that. But had you not had that, you'd be really winded right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And watching, yesterday I dropped my son off at practice. I was on vacation, so I'm like, okay, great. I get to go do all of these things with you this week. And watching the two of them out front of the pack, and they're not breathing heavy. I go, you know why you're not breathing heavy?
Yeah.
You guys were upset with me for making you run
right
from the circumference of the ballpark. But it's such a big piece to those kids developing. And it's a building block for them.
Absolutely. And I 100% agree. I think that the more that they're exposed to as kids, different sports, different activities, different things, I think it makes them better as people as they continue to grow. I mean, that's really what you get into it for. And as a coach myself, just seeing, development of people when they come in for me as freshmen and to where they finish, getting invitations to weddings and things like that.
Yep.
You see them develop as people, and they use some of those skills that, you learn. And I remember my youth coaches, things that they said still to this day where, it's all about making a difference in a kid's life and trying to make their life better. And
it's not a single kid in our program is going to go to the major leagues.
Right.
It's not going to happen. It's just the percentages are, there's only so many out there, and it's a global game.
Exactly.
Right? So it's not a bad goal to have.
Sure.
We all need goals to work to, but it's not the baseball piece as much as it is the life experience.
Yeah.
Dealing with adversity. Like this year, we had a new league, and there was a lot of adversity in there.
Yeah.
Believe me, I heard a lot from parents. It was learning to deal with conflict, learning to deal with challenges, and then coming back the next day. Like going to work, you're going to encounter people who aren't going to be empathetic with you.
Right.
Stressed out to no end, and then you come home at 6 o'clock, and then you got kids yelling at you and everything else kind of thing. And it's like, had I not had those experiences younger playing sports and seeing adversity. I didn't win a whole lot of things when I was younger.
Sure.
You know, I was laughing about, we were talking about wrestling. I won by forfeit more than anything.
Okay. Yeah.
Other time. So, you know, it was those kinds of experiences that I look back on and say, okay, great. How did I deal with adversity then?
Sure.
You know, understanding preparation and training and practices and those kinds of things. I hear a lot from parents today where they're like, well, I expected you to develop them into this. And it's like, how much practice are they doing at home? None.
Right. Yeah.
Like, well, you know,
yeah.
part of the learning here. It's like, how do you get better at work? You don't get better at work by just being there in that single moment. You know, there's additional things that you do. There's training. There's all these other little things that you've got to. It's the same thing.
Absolutely.
It's the same principle. And getting these kids that kind of experience now and getting them exposed to what it's like to try. You know, the win is actually in the journey. It's not the finish line.
Absolutely.
And, you know, sure, you know, you lose a couple of games here and there. Sometimes you lose them, you know, by big margins. But were you there at the end? Did you try?
Right.
And by the way, baseball, if you succeed 1 out of 3 times, you're a legend.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's a game of failure.
Right.
And learning how to deal with that failure. And then as a coach, also learning how to deal with that failure in that you've got to build them up now.
Yeah.
They just failed, you know, 2 out of 3 times. If we failed 2 out of 3 times at our job, fired.
Exactly. You know? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like, it's not even a question. You know, if you're a roofer and you're off by, you know, 2 out of 3 times, you're not going to do another roof.
No.
You know?
Yeah.
So these kids are also of a generation where the reset button exists.
Yeah.
And what's the easiest way out of things? You know, I'm going through some pain and I need to get out of this, like right now. You know, you leave, you hit the reset button, you do whatever it takes to get away from it. It's not, all right, I've got to take this head on and I got to look at the different things that I could do differently.
Yeah.
And now kids have to sit there and assess it. And I laugh about it with my youngest because his YouTube playlist is nothing but like skills and drills and all these other things, which is great.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't mind it. Then it's kind of like, okay, so he's taking these notes during, you know, this, and it's like, all right, well, I do the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, and I look at it and I go, okay, this didn't go well. So what can I do differently next time? And I see him using sports as a way of doing that as well and developing that.
Yeah.
So if I can continue to create that kind of environment for others,
that's fantastic. Yeah, I think you create winners in life that way, just by
being who you needed when you were younger.
Absolutely, and that's perfect. And I think that's a great way to wrap it up, just because that I think that feeds into everything. You know, everything that you talked about, being who you needed when you were younger.
Yep.
So that's awesome. I appreciate it. We're going to do 10% back to Streetsboro Junior Baseball and Softball on, I believe, the 21st, which is a Monday from 5 to 8. So we'll do that and roll from there.
Oh, we'll pack the house with some kids.
Appreciate it. Awesome. Thanks, Nate.
Thank you.